Picture a room of 47 people going completely silent at the same moment. Not the silence of boredom. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of 47 people who have just realized simultaneously that the thing they are watching cannot be undone. The room is Bungalow 14 on the Republic Pictures lot, Burbank, California. The date is Thursday, March 6, 1952. The time is 4:22 in the afternoon, and the light through the Venetian blinds cuts the floor in long orange strips the color of a desert at sundown. At one end of the room stands Herbert J. Yates, 63 years old, president of Republic Pictures, the man who built a studio from nothing and ran it like a personal fiefdom for 22 years. He is holding a single sheet of paper. His face is the color of old brick. He has just said something. At the other end of the room stands John Wayne, 6 feet 4 inches, 222 pounds. He has not moved. He has not spoken. His hands, each one the size of a catcher's mitt, are hanging loose at his sides. His eyes are on Yates. They have not moved from Yates for 38 seconds. The sheet of paper in Yates's hand is a revised budget document. A crew member's name has been crossed off it in red pencil. The man's name is Del Armstrong. He has worked with John Wayne for 11 years. What happens in the next 4 minutes will end Herbert Yates's authority over John Wayne forever. And the reason it happened the way it did, not with lawyers, not with threats, not with fists, is the story that history almost buried entirely. This is that story to understand why that room went silent. You have to understand what Republic Pictures was in the spring of 1952, and more importantly, what Herbert Yates was inside it. Republic Pictures had been incorporated in 1935 on the ashes of several smaller Poverty Row studios. Yates had not been a filmmaker. He had been a film processing magnate, a man who owned the labs that developed the negatives, which meant he understood the industry the way a butcher understands livestock. From the supply chain end, not the creative end. By 1952, he had produced or distributed more than 1,100 films. He had a net worth estimated at $31 million. He had survived the studio system battles of the 1940s, the union upheavals of 1946, and the first tremors of television eating into theater attendance. He was not a man who lost arguments on his own lot. His office in Bungalow 14 was 1,400 square feet of deliberate intimidation. The desk, a hand-carved mahogany piece he had shipped from London in 1939, was positioned on a raised platform 6 inches above floor level, so that anyone sitting across from him was physically looking up. The walls held 41 framed box office receipts, mounted in chronological order, the dollar figures facing outward. Visitors had once counted them. Yates knew they counted them. That was the point. By March of 1952, Republic Pictures was producing 43 films per year. Budget allocation for any given production was determined entirely by Yates. No committee, no board vote, no departmental review. His word was the budget. His word was the schedule. His word was the crew list. The specific film being produced in the first week of March 1952 was tentatively titled The Frontier Marshal, a Wayne vehicle that had been greenlit the previous November with a shooting budget of $892,000. Not a lavish picture by any stretch, but a solid one. The kind of mid-range Western that Republic had built its reputation on, with a 12-week shooting schedule, a crew of 61, and a location plan that included 3 weeks in Kanab, Utah, where the red sandstone bluffs gave you a landscape that cost nothing and looked like $1 million. Del Armstrong had been contracted as the film's chief makeup artist. He was 44 years old. He had worked on 31 productions. He was quiet, technically precise, and had a particular skill for the kind of sun-damaged, wind-creased aging makeup that Wayne's roles consistently demanded. The look of a man shaped by the outdoors rather than a makeup chair. He had started with Wayne on Red River in 1948. In 4 years, they had worked on 7 films together. Wayne trusted him the way a craftsman trusts a reliable tool, not with sentiment, but with the deep, unsentimental confidence of professional dependence. On Tuesday, March 4, 1952, 2 days before the meeting in Bungalow 14, Herbert Yates called his production manager, a man named Gerald Fossey, and instructed him to reduce the crew budget for The Frontier Marshal by $14,000. The instruction was specific: cut 2 positions from the makeup department and consolidate responsibilities. Del Armstrong's contract, at $420 per week for a projected 12-week shoot, totaling the morning, John Wayne knew exactly what had happened. exactly who had ordered it, and exactly what had been said to cover it up. He arrived at Republic Pictures at 3:58 that afternoon. He did not call ahead. He did not send a message through his agent. He walked through the main gate on Ventura Boulevard, nodded to the guard, a man named Clarence who had been at that gate for 6 years, and walked directly to Bungalow 14. He was not dressed for a confrontation. He was wearing khaki work pants, a dark brown canvas shirt with the sleeves rolled to mid-forearm, and a pair of boots he had worn on location in Moab 2 seasons earlier, the leather creased and dusty at the toe. His hair was uncombed. He had been on the lot that morning for an equipment fitting on a separate production and had not gone home between then and now. He did not look like a movie star. He never looked like a movie star when he was working. He looked, in the words of director John Ford, who said this publicly in 1958, like a man who had been to a few places and come back without feeling the need to describe them. The canvas shirt stretched across a chest that measured 48 inches. His neck was 17 inches around, the same measurement, noted by a Republic wardrobe supervisor that same year, as a standard police riot baton standing upright. The production meeting in Bungalow 14 had been scheduled weeks in advance. A standard pre-location walkthrough with the director, 2 assistant directors, the director of photography, the production manager, 3 department heads, and assorted assistants. 47 people total in a room designed to hold perhaps 30 comfortably. The room smelled of cigarette smoke, coffee from a percolator in the corner, and the particular dry paper smell of script binders and budget sheets stacked 6 deep on a folding table against the east wall. Wayne entered without knocking. The director, a man named Wallace Ford, no relation to John, looked up from the table and started to speak. Wayne held up one hand flat, palm out. Ford stopped. The gesture was not rude. It was not aggressive. It was simply complete, the way a traffic signal is complete. It required no explanation. Wayne looked at the room for 3 full seconds. He was cataloging. Anyone who knew him recognized the behavior. He was identifying who was there, where Yates was standing, who was between them, and what the exits were. Not from tactical calculation. From habit. The habit of a man who had spent 15 years on working film sets, where understanding a physical space before you moved through it was simply professional practice. He found Yates standing near the mahogany desk, standing, not sitting, which meant Yates had seen Wayne come through the door and had risen. That detail mattered. It was later noted by Gerald Fossey in a private letter written to his brother in 1971, 19 years after the fact. Fossey wrote that the moment Wayne walked in, Yates stood up. And that standing up, Fossey reflected, was the first mistake Yates made that afternoon. Because John Wayne had not come to sit down. Yates spoke first. He always spoke first. It was a deliberate strategy, documented by 3 people who worked closely with him during his Republic years. Controlling the opening of any conversation meant controlling its framework. If you named the subject, you owned it, he said, and this is reconstructed from Fossey's letter and the separate account of Assistant Director Raymond Haight, who was standing 4 feet away. He said, "Duke, we didn't expect you. The budget meeting is for department heads. You'll get the figures through your agent." It was a masterpiece of casual dismissal. 14 words, each one doing work. The use of Duke rather than Mr. Wayne. Familiar, diminishing. The word expect. Placing Wayne in the position of an arrival that was either unwelcome or irrelevant. The reference to agents, reminding Wayne of the formal channel, the bureaucratic layer that separated talent from decision-making. Wayne let the 14 words land. He did not react to them. He stood where he was, 12 feet from Yates, with a row of folding chairs between them. And he said nothing for a full 4 seconds. In a room of 47 people, for seconds of silence is geological. Haight would later write in a 1967 interview in American Cinematographer magazine that those 4 seconds were the most uncomfortable of his professional life. Not because anything was happening. Production assistant named Carol Elgin, who was 23 years old and had been at Republic for 4 months, would tell this story to her daughter 40 years later. She said the 2 words hit the room like a physical thing. Not loud. She used the word flat. She said Wayne's voice went completely flat, the way a road goes flat when it reaches the desert. All the variation gone, nothing but the straight distance ahead. Yates's smile held for a moment longer than it should have. That was the tell. The smile should have dropped immediately. Instead, it stayed, by Haight's estimate, approximately 2 seconds too long. And in that 2 seconds, Everyone in Bungalow 14 watched Herbert Yates decide whether he was going to maintain the lie in front of 46 witnesses. He maintained it. He said, "I'm telling you what happened, Duke. Dell had a better offer. I wish him well." And that was when John Wayne reached into the breast pocket of his canvas shirt, unfolded a single sheet of paper, and held it out toward Yates without moving from where he stood. What happened next, nobody in that room expected. The sheet of paper Wayne was holding was Dell Armstrong's termination letter. The original. 2 paragraphs on Republic Pictures letterhead, signed by Gerald Fossey, dated March 5, 1952. Wayne had driven to Armstrong's house in Van Nuys that morning, between the equipment fitting and this meeting, and Armstrong had given it to him. In the first second, Yates looked at the paper. In the second second, his eyes moved from the paper to Wayne's face. In the third second, the production assistant Carol Elgin would later say, the oxygen left the room. Wayne did not wave the letter. He did not thrust it forward. He held it extended in his right hand at approximately chest height, the way you hold something you are offering to someone who has not yet decided whether to take it. He said nothing. The letter was the argument. The letter was the entirety of the argument. It needed no accompaniment. Yates did not move toward the letter. And here is where you must understand something about what John Wayne was doing in that room. Because what he was doing was not what it looked like. It was not a confrontation in the conventional sense. He had not come to Bungalow 14 to fight Herbert Yates. He had not come to embarrass him in front of 46 people, though that was now unavoidable. He had come for one specific and narrow thing. He had come to make the lie visible. That is all. To hold it up in a room full of witnesses and let it stand there, exposed, so that everyone present, every director and assistant director, every department head, every production assistant, would know exactly what kind of man Herbert Yates was when a budget decision needed covering. Wayne understood something about institutions that most people in that room did not. The lie was not the problem. The lie was the symptom. The problem was the assumption behind it. The assumption that talent could be managed the same way expenses could be managed, with adjustments and reclassifications and memo language that quietly changed the narrative. The assumption that John Wayne would hear Dell Armstrong left voluntarily and absorb it and move on, because the machinery of the studio was too large and too established to push back against. He was demonstrating that the assumption was wrong. Yates said, "Where did you get that?" Wayne said, "Dell gave it to me this morning." That line hung in the room for approximately 3 seconds. Raymond Haight, in his 1967 account, described those 3 seconds as the moment he understood he was watching something that mattered. He was not an introspective man by his own description. He had been working in Hollywood since 1939 and considered himself largely unshockable. But he wrote that in those 3 seconds, watching Yates stand at his platform desk holding a smile that had nowhere left to go, he felt something he could only describe as embarrassment. Not for himself, but for the room. For all 46 of them standing there while Herbert Yates tried to find a sentence that could survive what was on that piece of paper. He could not find one. The silence lasted 5 full seconds. Nobody coughed. Nobody shifted a chair. The percolator in the corner had finished its cycle, and the room had lost even that small noise. 5 seconds is long enough to hear your own heartbeat. Then Wayne lowered the letter. He folded it once, along the original crease, and returned it to his breast pocket. He looked at Yates for a moment that Haight measured at, approximately 4 more seconds. Then he looked at the rest of the room, not at any individual, but across it, the way a man looks at a room he has already decided to leave. He said, "Dell Armstrong is on this picture. His rate stays at $420. The difference comes out of my deferment." He turned toward the door. He stopped. Without turning back, he said, "Gerald, you can leave the revised budget on the table." And he walked out. He did not slam the door. He did not pause for effect. He pulled the door closed behind him the way you close a door when the conversation in the room is finished. Quietly, fully, with the particular finality of a man who does not need to hear what comes next. Inside Bungalow 14, nobody spoke for what Haight estimated was 30 seconds. 47 witnesses. 30 seconds. 1 sheet of paper on Republic Pictures letterhead. That's not a bluff. That's preparation. Gerald Fossey, who had been standing against the east wall with the budget sheets, later described what happened in the room after Wayne left. He said Yates sat down, slowly, heavily, the way a man sits when his legs have decided before he has. He said Yates looked at the budget sheet on the table for a long time. He said nobody in the room spoke to Yates, and Yates did not speak to anyone in the room. He said the meeting adjourned itself, without anyone officially adjourning it. People simply began gathering their things. Within 8 minutes, Bungalow 14 was empty except for Yates and Fosse. What those two men said to each other in the empty room. Fosse mentions it in his 1971 letter to his brother, in a single sentence. Yates told me to fix it, and I fixed it. That is the entirety of the record. Del Armstrong received a phone call that evening. His contract was reinstated at his original rate. He was on the bus to Kanab, Utah, 7 days later. Philosophical anchor, minutes 4 to 5/10 to 12/18 to 20. Minutes 4 to 5. Embed within Phase 2 world-building narration, there is a version of the Hollywood studio system that its architects believed was permanent. The permanent version required a specific kind of human compliance. The compliance of men and women who needed the machine more than the machine needed them. Herbert Yates had built his version of that machine over 22 years. He had been very good at it. He was not wrong that it worked. He was wrong about one thing. He believed John Wayne was inside the machine. Wayne had never been inside any machine in his life. He understood that loyalty, not contract language, not billing position, not box office percentage. Loyalty was the only currency that did not depreciate. Minutes 10 to 12. Embed at start of Phase 5 demonstration narration, what Wayne brought into that room was not evidence in the legal sense. A termination letter proves nothing about lying. It only proves that someone was terminated. The lie lived in the gap between the letter and what Fosse had told Wayne on Wednesday night. Wayne knew that. He also knew that in a room of 47 people, the gap between a letter and a convenient story is not a legal question. It is a character question. And character questions, in Wayne's understanding of the world, did not require lawyers. They required witnesses. Minutes 18 to 20, embed in Phase 6/Phase 7 transition the deepest truth of what happened in Bungalow 14 on March 6, 1952, is not about the lie itself, or the letter, or even Del Armstrong's job. It is about what Wayne chose not to do. He chose not to threaten Yates. He chose not to make a speech. He chose not to leverage his box office position, which in 1952 was substantial enough to make the threat very real. He could have said, "Restore Armstrong or I walk." He did not say it. He let the letter say it. He let the room say it. He let Yates's own face, in front of 46 professionals, say everything that needed saying. Because Wayne understood something that very few powerful men ever learn. Silence, applied with precision, is not the absence of force. It is force concentrated to a point. 3 days after the meeting in Bungalow 14, Herbert Yates requested a private meeting with John Wayne. Not through agents. Not through Fosse. A personal request, passed through Wayne's personal secretary, asking for 30 minutes at a location of Wayne's choosing. Wayne chose the commissary on the Republic lot at 7 a.m. before the morning crew call, when the room would be nearly empty. He was already there when Yates arrived. He was drinking coffee and reading what Yates's aide later described as a location survey for the Kanab shoot, not pretending to work, actually working. The distinction, for anyone who knew Wayne, was significant. He was not performing composure. He was composed. Yates sat down across from him. He was carrying nothing, no papers, no documents, none of the usual apparatus of a studio head establishing authority. He sat the way a man sits when he has already rehearsed what he intends to say and has decided it will not require props. He said, "I want to know why you didn't go to your agent." It was a genuine question. Not hostile. Not defensive. Genuine. The question of a man trying to understand a move he had not anticipated and could not quite categorize. In Yates's experience, talent went to agents. Agents went to lawyers. Lawyers went to studio legal affairs. That was the channel. That was how it worked. The mirror image of Yates's original 14 words 3 days earlier. But where Yates's 14 words had been a structure of dismissal, Wayne's were a structure of clarification. Not accusation. Clarification. The kind that does not require a response, only a decision about whether you are willing to carry it forward. Yates was quiet for what Fosse, who heard this account from Yates himself, privately, sometime in 1953, described as a long time. Then he said, "I've been running pictures since before you were making them. I've made that kind of cut 100 times. Wayne said, "I know. Then you understand why it happened." Wayne said, "I understand why you made the cut. I don't understand why you lied about it." Another silence. Yates turned his coffee cup in his hands. A gesture Fosse mentioned specifically, the kind of detail that survives because it is so unlike the man. Yates was not a man who fidgeted. Then Yates said something that Fosse recorded in his 1971 letter as the most honest thing he ever heard Herbert Yates say out loud in a professional context. He said, "I lied about it because I didn't think it mattered to you." Wayne nodded once. He said, "That's the part you should think about." They shook hands across the table. Not a warm handshake, not a reconciliation. A handshake of mutual comprehension, the kind two men exchange when they have arrived, by different routes, at the same fact. The fact, in this case, being that something real had changed between them. Not irreparably, but permanently. Wayne finished his coffee. He picked up the location survey. He said, and this is the line Fosse quoted directly, the one that he said stayed with him for the rest of his working life. "Herb, the people who work for you are the picture. Every one of them." He stood up, nodded, and walked out to the lot to prepare for the day's work. Yates sat in the commissary for 20 minutes after Wayne left. Fosse found him there. He did not ask what had been said. Yates told him anyway. Years later, specifically in 1954, 2 years after the morning in the commissary, Herbert Yates was navigating the most difficult period of his tenure at Republic Pictures. Television had hit the theatrical market with the force of a structural change, not a trend. Audience numbers were down across the industry. Republic's output had dropped from 43 films in 1952 to 31 in 1954, and the internal pressure to cut costs was no longer a preference, but a financial reality. In the summer of 1954, facing a round of budget reductions that would affect dozens of crew positions across 7 productions, Yates called a meeting of his production managers. Fosse was there. By Fosse's account, Yates went through the proposed cuts line by line, and on 3 separate occasions, paused at individual crew names that had long tenures at the studio and asked, "Who knows about this person? What's their history with us?" He had never asked those questions before. Not once in 20 years. Fosse did not connect it publicly to the morning in the commissary. But in his 1971 letter, he made the connection explicit. He wrote, "I think about that meeting differently now." He was checking. He was making sure he knew who the people were before he made the call. I don't know where that came from, but I know when it started. Del Armstrong worked with John Wayne on 14 more films over the following 17 years, through 1969. He was on location for The Alamo in 1960, for The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance in 1961, for True Grit in 1969. He worked into his late 50s. He trained 3 junior makeup artists during his Republic years, each of whom went on to long careers in the industry. One of them, a man named Bob Westmoreland, later worked with Clint Eastwood on 11 productions in the 1970s and 1980s and carried with him, by his own account, a philosophy about crew loyalty that he traced directly to things Armstrong had told him about how John Wayne worked. The lesson traveled, the way lessons do when they are planted in the right soil. Herbert Yates and John Wayne parted ways professionally in 1958, when Wayne left Republic to found Batjack Productions, the independent company that would give him complete control over his projects for the rest of his career. The separation was not acrimonious. It was the natural consequence of a man outgrowing an arrangement that had always been, at its root, based on the assumption that the arrangement was permanent. Yates died in 1966. By that point, Republic Pictures had effectively ceased production of theatrical films, pivoting to television content and eventually to library licensing. The studio he had built, the 1,100 films, the 43 pictures-a-year machinery, the mahogany desk on its 6-inch platform, was gone. Wayne outlived the studio by 13 years. Now returned to Bungalow 14. March 6, 1952. 4:22 in the afternoon. 47 people in a room that smells of coffee and paper and cigarette smoke. A man holding a letter. Another man holding a smile that has nowhere left to go.